My rich ex-boyfriend died and left a Jeopardy game to determine who would inherit. The lawyer's office smelled like mahogany and broken dreams, and I was about to find out which category I fell into. Miss Chen, are you certain you want to participate? Mr. Whitmore adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, peering at me like I was a particularly puzzling legal document. You have 48 hours to decline. I shifted in the leather chair that probably cost more than my rent. I'm sure. He nodded and slid a thick manila envelope across his desk. The game will take place this Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Pemberton Estate. 5 contestants total. Winner takes all $50 million. $50 million. The number still made my stomach flip. 6 months ago, Marcus had told me I'd never understand real money. Now his real money was sitting in some trust account, waiting for whoever could prove they knew him best through a twisted game show he'd designed from beyond the grave. Who are the other contestants? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. His fiancée, Vivian Ashworth. Of course. The blonde socialite who'd started appearing on Marcus's Instagram feed approximately 36 hours after he'd dumped me via text. His parents, Richard and Eleanor Blackwood. The same parents who'd cut him off when he'd refused to join the family law firm, who'd only started speaking to him again when his startup hit unicorn status. And the fifth? His business partner, James Morrison. I almost laughed. James, who'd been calling Marcus a sellout corporate hack behind his back for the past year while smiling to his face at board meetings. Marcus had complained about it constantly during our late-night calls when he couldn't sleep, when the pressure of running Technova was eating him alive. But Marcus was gone now, had been for 3 weeks. 3 weeks since that rainy Tuesday when his Tesla wrapped around a tree on Pacific Coast Highway. 3 weeks since I'd learned about his death not from a phone call or even the news, but from a Facebook notification that people were posting on his timeline. The game format is unique, Mr. Whitmore continued, pulling out a leather-bound folder. Mr. Blackwood spent considerable time designing it before his death. Questions about his life, his preferences, his experiences. 3 rounds of increasing difficulty and personal intimacy. Jeopardy style? Precisely. He was quite specific about the format. The lawyer's mouth twitched slightly. He included a note saying you'd appreciate the reference. Heat flushed my cheeks. Marcus had been obsessed with Jeopardy, DVR'd every episode. During our 3 years together, we'd watched it religiously at 7:30 p.m., him shouting answers at the TV while I mostly just enjoyed seeing him relaxed and happy. It was one of the few times he'd seemed like the Marcus I'd fallen in love with, not the increasingly paranoid, money-obsessed stranger he'd become. There's something else. Mr. Whitmore's voice dropped. He left individual messages for each contestant. Yours is in the envelope. My hands trembled as I stood up. The envelope felt heavy, final. Miss Chen? Off the record, he changed his will 2 days before the accident. The original version left everything to charity. 2 days before he died, Marcus had decided we all deserved a chance to fight for his money. The question was, why? I didn't open Marcus's letter until I was safely locked in my studio apartment, sitting on the second-hand couch he'd always hated. The envelope felt like it contained either an apology or a final insult. With Marcus, those had often been the same thing. Sarah. Asterisk if you're reading this, you've decided to play my game. I'm not surprised. You were always stubborn, even when it hurt you, asterisk. Asterisk I know what you're thinking, that this is my way of proving you were just another gold digger. Maybe part of me wants that to be true. It would make what I did easier to justify, asterisk. Asterisk but here's what the others don't know, the questions aren't just about facts. They're about understanding who I really was, not who I pretended to be. You saw through my masks better than anyone, Sarah. Even when I hated you for it, asterisk. Asterisk the game has rules beyond what Whitmore will tell you. Hidden rules. Look for the pattern in round 2. Remember what I taught you about reading people, asterisk. Win or lose, you'll finally understand why I had to let you go. M. Asterisk P.S. Vivian doesn't know about the Cayman Islands account. Use that, asterisk. My hands were shaking as I set the letter down. Marcus had always been manipulative, but this felt different. Desperate, maybe. And what the hell was the Cayman Islands account? I grabbed my laptop and started researching. Vivian Ashworth, 24, pharmaceutical heiress, degree from Stanford that daddy probably bought. Her Instagram was a parade of charity galas and designer handbags. But there, tagged at the Pemberton Estate just last week, already playing the greeting fiancé while wearing a Cartier bracelet that cost more than most people's cars. Richard and Eleanor Blackwood were easier to research. Boston old money, the kind of people who thought Marcus's tech fortune was new money trash until they realized they could benefit from it. They'd publicly disowned him at 22, then showed up at his IPO celebration 3 years ago like nothing had happened. James Morrison was the wild card. He and Marcus had started Technova in a garage, best friends since MIT. But success had poisoned their relationship. Marcus had confided in me about James's resentment, how he'd been making moves behind Marcus's back, talking to investors about a potential buyout that would push Marcus out of his own company. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Is this Sarah Chen? Who's asking? James Morrison. We need to talk. There are things about Marcus you don't know. Things that make this game a lot more dangerous than some lawyer's publicity stunt. What kind of things? Not over the phone. Coffee tomorrow? The Blue Bottle on Melrose, 10 a.m. He hung up before I could answer. I stared at my phone, Marcus's letter still spread across my coffee table. Hidden rules. Cayman Islands accounts. Business partners calling with mysterious warnings. This wasn't just about money anymore, if it ever had been. I walked to my easel, where my latest painting sat half-finished. It was supposed to be for a gallery showing next month, my big break. But looking at it now, all I could see was another reminder of everything I couldn't afford. The cheap canvas, the discount paints, the dreams that always seemed just out of reach. $50 million would change everything. But Marcus had never given me anything without strings attached, and I doubted death had made him more generous. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The subject line made my blood run cold. The game starts now, V. The message contained a single photo, Marcus's grave, with fresh flowers. White roses, my favorite, not hers. Someone was already playing by different rules. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo of Marcus's grave with white roses that I hadn't left there. By 9:45 a.m., I was already at Blue Bottle, nursing my second espresso and watching every person who walked through the door. James arrived exactly at 10 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept either. His usually perfect startup founder appearance was disheveled, wrinkled button down, hair uncombed, the kind of desperation that expensive clothes couldn't hide. Sarah. He slid into the seat across from me, glancing around nervously. Thanks for coming. You said this was dangerous. Start talking. He pulled out his phone, swiped to a screenshot of what looked like financial records. Marcus wasn't just rich when he died. He was hemorrhaging money. Fast. I leaned forward. What do you mean? Technova's been bleeding cash for 8 months. We had a product launch that completely failed, cost us $12 million. Then there were the lawsuits, the patent disputes, the SEC investigation into our accounting practices. James's voice dropped. The $50 million in his will? That's basically everything liquid he had left. So why are you telling me this instead of keeping it to yourself? Because I don't think this game is what it seems. He showed me another screenshot, an email thread. Look at the dates. Marcus designed this whole elaborate Jeopardy setup 3 months ago, right after the SEC started sniffing around. But here's the weird part, he kept changing the contestant list. Originally, it was just family. Then he added Vivian. Then you. Then me. Maybe he couldn't decide who he hated most. Or maybe he was building something specific. Sarah, what if this isn't about who knew him best? What if it's about who he trusted to handle what comes next? Before I could ask what he meant, my phone buzzed. Text from unknown number, asterisk stop talking to him. You're being watched. The asterisk. I showed James the message. His face went pale. This is what I was afraid of, he muttered. Vivian's not just some gold-digging socialite. Her family's pharmaceutical company has been trying to acquire Technova's biotech patents for 2 years. Patents worth about $40 million. You think she killed him? I think she had motivation. James glanced toward the window. And I think she's been planning this game longer than any of us realized. My mind raced back to Marcus's letter. Asterisk hidden rules. Look for the pattern in round 2. Asterisk what if the game itself was Marcus's way of exposing something? Or protecting something? There's more. James pulled up another email. 2 days before Marcus died, the same day he changed his will, he liquidated a bunch of investments. Moved about $15 million offshore. The lawyer mentioned Cayman Islands, right? I kept my face neutral, but Marcus's postscript echoed in my head. Vivian doesn't know about the Cayman Islands account. Where's that money now? I asked. That's the thing. I can't trace it. It's like it vanished. James leaned closer. But I think whoever wins this game gets more than just the $50 million in probate. I think they get access to whatever Marcus was hiding. A woman in designer sunglasses walked past our table for the 3rd time, talking loudly on her phone about nothing. Too loudly, like she was performing. We should go, I said. Sarah, wait. There's something else you need to know about the night Marcus died. I was already standing, but I sat back down. What? He called me at 11:30 p.m., 3 hours before the accident. He was panicked, said he'd figured something out about the patents, about why Vivian's family was really interested in Technova. James's voice cracked. He said he was going to drive up to the house in Malibu to get some documents from his safe. That's where he was going when he crashed. What kind of documents? I don't know. But Sarah, that wasn't Marcus's usual route to Malibu. He was driving the back way through the canyon, like he was trying to avoid being followed. The woman with sunglasses was back, now standing right behind James, still fake talking on her phone. I grabbed my purse. We're leaving. Now. We made it 2 blocks before the black SUV started following us. James noticed it first, his startup paranoia finally useful for something other than obsessing over competitors. Don't look back, he muttered, steering me around the corner toward his Tesla. But we got company. My heart hammered as we climbed into his car. The SUV crawled past the intersection, windows too tinted to see inside, but I caught a flash of blonde hair in the passenger seat. Vivian? I whispered. Or someone working for her family. James started the engine, hands shaking slightly. The Ashworths don't mess around when it comes to business acquisitions. My lawyer warned me about them during the patent negotiations, said they have a reputation for playing dirty. He pulled out slowly, taking a deliberately random route through West Hollywood. The SUV stayed 3 cars back, professional and patient. James, what exactly were those patents Marcus was worried about? Biotech applications for neural interface technology. Sounds boring, but we're talking about the next generation of medical devices. Brain-computer interfaces for treating depression, PTSD, addiction. His voice was tight with stress. The pharmaceutical applications alone could be worth hundreds of millions. And Vivian's family wanted them. Desperately. They made 3 offers to buy Technova outright, each one more aggressive than the last. Marcus kept refusing, said he didn't trust their motives. James turned into a parking garage, tires squealing. The night he called me, he said he'd found something in Vivian's things. Proof that the Ashworths weren't just interested in the patents, they were planning to bury the technology. What do you mean, bury it? Keep it off the market. Sarah, what if those neural interfaces could actually cure depression cheaply? The Ashworth family makes $800 million a year selling antidepressants. A cure would destroy their entire business model. We sat in the dim garage, engine ticking as it cooled. The SUV hadn't followed us inside, but that didn't mean we were safe. My phone buzzed with another text from Vivian, asterisk coffee dates are so sweet. Shame about what happened to Marcus when he went for a late night drive, asterisk. I showed James the message. His face went ashen. She's threatening you. She's threatening both of us. I thought about Marcus's letter, about the hidden rules he'd mentioned. James, what if the game on Saturday isn't really about the money? What if it's Marcus's way of making sure the right person gets control of those patents? You think he hid them? I think he hid everything. The Cayman Islands money, the patents, maybe evidence about what the Ashworths were planning. I pulled up the photo Vivian had sent of Marcus's grave with the white roses. She's been playing this game since before he died. But Marcus was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. James stared at the message on my phone. The other contestants don't know any of this. His parents just want their cut of his money. I wanted to clear my conscience about how I'd been treating him. And I wanted to prove he was wrong about me. But Vivian wants those patents. Which means she can't let any of us win. A new text appeared, this time from a number I didn't recognize, * parking garage on level 3. Smart choice. But there are 5 exits and I only need to cover 1. The game ends Saturday, but your participation is optional. Make the right choice. A friend *. James and I looked at each other. We were in deeper than either of us had realized, and Saturday's Jeopardy game was starting to look less like a quirky inheritance puzzle and more like a trap. We need to get to that Malibu house, I said. Whatever Marcus was looking for the night he died, we need to find it first. The Malibu house isn't exactly accessible, James said as we sat in his car, still hiding in the parking garage. Marcus had it locked down like Fort Knox after the break-in last year. What break-in? Someone tried to get into his home office. Nothing was taken, but it spooked him. He installed a whole new security system, cameras, motion sensors, the works. James pulled up something on his phone. But I still have the guest access code. He never changed it after. After he dumped me? Yeah. James looked uncomfortable. Look, Sarah, I know Marcus could be a bastard, but that last month before he ended things with you? He was different. Paranoid, sure, but also protective. He kept asking me about secure communication, offshore banking, how to hide assets from corporate investigations. My phone rang. Unknown number again, but this time I recognized the voice immediately. Sarah, darling. Vivian's voice was honey over broken glass. I hear you've been making friends with poor James. How sweet. What do you want, Vivian? Just a friendly chat between the future contestants. I thought you might want to know that Marcus's little Jeopardy game has some interesting prizes beyond the money. She paused dramatically. Did you know the winner also gets full control of Technova's intellectual property portfolio? Every patent, every trade secret, every piece of research data. James went rigid beside me. He clearly hadn't known that part. The patents are worth more than the cash, aren't they? I asked. To the right buyer, yes. My family has been very interested in Marcus's neural interface work. We think it has tremendous potential. The way she said potential made my skin crawl. Of course, if someone else were to win those assets, well, that would be unfortunate for everyone involved. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. Some games have higher stakes than others, and some players are more prepared than others. Her voice hardened. Marcus thought he was so clever, hiding his little treasures. But dead men don't keep secrets very well. The line went dead. James was already starting the car. We're going to Malibu. Now. What about the surveillance? We'll take the long way, surface streets. He backed out of the parking space, checking mirrors constantly. Sarah, if Vivian's family gets those patents, Marcus's work dies with him. Everything he built, everything he believed in, it all disappears. As we drove north toward the coast, James filled in more pieces of the puzzle. The SEC investigation wasn't just about accounting irregularities, it was about whether Marcus had been hiding assets to keep them away from potential hostile takeovers. The Ashworth family had been pressuring regulators, claiming Technova was engaging in fraudulent business practices. Marcus figured it out about 2 weeks before he died, James said, navigating through afternoon traffic. The Ashworths weren't just trying to buy us out, they were trying to destroy the company's credibility so they could acquire the patents for pennies on the dollar. And Vivian was feeding them inside information. Had to be. She knew about board meetings, strategic plans, research timelines. James's knuckles were wide on the steering wheel. Marcus started leaving fake documents around his apartment, trying to figure out what was getting back to her family. My phone chimed with a text from an unknown number, * the blue folder in his desk. 3rd drawer, left side. Password is your birthday. M***. I stared at the message, heart pounding. James, did Marcus have some way to send delayed messages? What do you mean? I showed him the text. This is either someone pretending to be Marcus or he set up some kind of automated system before he died. Marcus was obsessed with digital security. He had apps for everything, encrypted communications, scheduled emails, dead man switches. James glanced at the message. Your birthday, huh? He really did love you, you know. Even after. Then why did he? Because he thought he was protecting you. Sarah, the night he broke up with you, 3 of our servers got hacked. Someone was trying to access our research files, and the breach came through your laptop's IP address. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Marcus thought you were working for someone, feeding them information. It took us weeks to figure out you'd been targeted, that someone had used your connection to him to get into our systems. James's voice was gentle now. By the time he realized you were innocent, he'd already pushed you away. And then Vivian showed up, and he thought, hell, I don't know what he thought. We were climbing into the hills now, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly ahead. But all I could think about was Marcus, alone and paranoid, believing I had betrayed him. No wonder his letter felt so conflicted. Another text arrived, * they're already at the house. Back entrance through the garden. Hurry, *. The game was starting early, and we weren't the only players who knew the real rules. The Malibu house sat dark against the cliffs, its modern glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sun like a mirror hiding secrets. James parked 3 blocks away, and we approached through the neighbor's property, staying low behind the perfectly manicured hedges that probably cost more than my annual rent. There, James whispered, pointing to a black Range Rover in Marcus's circular driveway. That's Vivian's car. My phone buzzed with another mysterious text, * security system disabled 3:47 p.m. She has a key. You have 23 minutes before backup arrives, *. Someone's helping us, I murmured, showing James the message. But who? We crept around to the back garden, where Marcus's infinity pool stretched toward the ocean. The sliding glass doors to his office were open. Vivian was definitely already inside. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see her silhouette moving frantically through Marcus's desk drawers. She's looking for the same thing we are, James breathed. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus's house landline, a number I'd memorized during 3 years of late-night conversations when he couldn't sleep. It rang once, twice, then Vivian's voice answered, sharp and irritated. What? Having trouble finding what you're looking for? I asked sweetly. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. Then, Sarah. How delightfully predictable. I suppose James told you about the patents. Among other things. Like how your family orchestrated the SEC investigation. And how you've been stealing research data since the day you met Marcus. Through the window, I watched Vivian's shoulders tense. She was wearing all black, practical clothes, not her usual designer pieces. This wasn't a social visit. Marcus was brilliant but naive, she said, still rifling through papers. He actually thought he could change the world with his little brain gadgets. But innovation without proper business strategy is just expensive failure. So you decided to help him fail. I decided to help his technology reach its full market potential. The Ashworth Foundation has the resources to properly monetize neural interface applications. Marcus was going to give it away practically for free. She laughed, cold and sharp. Do you know what his business plan was? Open source patents. Can you imagine? James grabbed my arm, pointing toward the front of the house. 2 more black SUVs were pulling into the driveway, the backup arriving early. Vivian, I said into the phone, you might want to check your driveway. I watched her freeze through the window, then rushed to the front office window. Her cursing was audible even from the garden. 23 minutes was optimistic, James muttered. My phone chimed with another text, *garden shed. Toolbox under the workbench. Move now, *. We sprinted across the lawn toward Marcus's gardening shed, a sleek structure that probably cost more than most people's houses. Inside, behind bags of organic fertilizer and designer pruning shears, James found an old metal toolbox that looked completely out of place among Marcus's expensive hobby equipment. The box was locked, but a quick search revealed a key taped under the workbench. Inside, 3 USB drives, a manila folder thick with documents, and a handwritten letter addressed to whoever finds this first. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead and Vivian is probably responsible. The USB drives contain everything, financial records, recorded phone calls, emails proving the Ashworth family's plan to suppress the neural interface patents. The folder has the real research data thereafter *. Sarah, if this is you, I'm sorry. About everything. The Cayman account number is your phone number backwards plus our anniversary date. Use it wisely, *. The Jeopardy game is real, but it's not about the money. Round 2 will contain questions only you can answer, not because you knew me best, but because I trust you most, *. Win the game. Expose the truth. Don't let them bury what we built, *. All my love, M. Footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Multiple sets, moving fast. Back door, James whispered, shoving the USB drives into his jacket pocket. But as we eased open the shed's rear exit, Vivian's voice carried clearly across the garden. I know you're here, Sarah. And I know you found Marcus's little insurance policy. But here's the thing about insurance, sometimes the payout isn't worth the risk. We had the evidence that could destroy her family's reputation and potentially land them in prison. But we still had to survive long enough to use it. And Saturday's Jeopardy game was looking more and more like our only chance to expose the truth in a way that couldn't be buried or covered up. The game was about to begin, and the stakes had just gotten deadly. We made it to James's car without getting caught, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely buckle my seatbelt. The USB drives felt like they were burning a hole through his jacket pocket as we drove back toward the city, taking random turns to make sure we weren't followed. We need to copy these files, James said, patting his pocket. Multiple backups, multiple locations. If Vivian's willing to break into Marcus's house in broad daylight, she's not going to stop here. My phone rang. This time it was Mr. Whitmore, the lawyer. Miss Chen, I'm calling to inform you that the game location has been changed. Mrs. Ashworth's request, citing security concerns. His voice sounded strained. The competition will now take place at the Ashworth Foundation headquarters tomorrow at 11 a.m. instead of Saturday at the estate. Tomorrow? That's not what. I'm aware of the original timeline. However, Mrs. Ashworth has pointed out certain irregularities that require the game to proceed more quickly. There was a pause. Miss Chen, I feel obligated to mention that you still have the right to withdraw from the competition. The line went dead before I could respond. They're moving the timeline up, I told James. Tomorrow morning at Vivian's family building. Home field advantage. James pulled into a 24-hour internet cafe parking lot. We need to see what's on these drives before tomorrow. The cafe smelled like energy drinks and desperation, filled with gamers and insomniacs hunched over glowing screens. We claimed a corner computer and plugged in the first USB drive. What we found made my stomach drop. Recorded phone calls between Vivian and her father, discussing neutralizing the Technova threat. Email chains about bribing SEC officials to fast-track the investigation. Financial records showing payments to hackers for corporate espionage. And worst of all, a detailed timeline for asset acquisition contingencies that ended with a note dated the day before Marcus died, final conversation scheduled. If negotiation fails, proceed to alternative resolution. Jesus, James whispered, staring at the screen. They planned it. The second drive contained Marcus's real research data, not just the neural interface patents, but breakthrough applications that could revolutionize treatment for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and addiction. Simple, affordable devices that could help millions of people. And the Ashworth family wanted to make sure they never saw the light of day. Look at this, James pointed to a financial projection document. Marcus's technology could cut into their pharmaceutical profits by $12 billion over the next decade. 12 billion reasons to commit murder. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, * coffee shop on Sunset and Vine. Back booth. Come alone. You have something I need. Eleanor *. Eleanor Blackwood. Marcus's mother. I have to go, I told James. Are you insane? After what we just found? She's one of the other contestants. Maybe she knows something we don't. I copied the USB files to my own drive, then deleted our browsing history. Keep copying everything. We need as much evidence as possible before tomorrow. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 9 p.m., just a few students and one elegantly dressed woman in her 60s sitting in the back booth. Eleanor Blackwood looked exactly like Marcus would have in 30 years, sharp cheekbones, calculating eyes, and an aura of barely contained ambition. Sarah Chen, she said as I approached. You're prettier than your photos. Mrs. Blackwood. I slid into the booth across from her. Interesting timing for a meeting. I know about Malibu. I know about the USB drives. And I know my son was murdered. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. The question is, what are you planning to do about it? Expose the truth. At tomorrow's game? Eleanor laughed bitterly. My dear girl, do you really think Vivian is going to let any of us leave that building if we pose a threat to her family? The weight of her words settled over me. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we change the game. Eleanor leaned forward. Marcus always was too clever for his own good. But he wasn't the only one who could plan 3 steps ahead. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Insurance policy. My own investigation into the Ashworth family started the moment I realized what kind of woman had sunk her claws into my son. Inside were photographs, financial records, and what looked like surveillance footage timestamps. The night Marcus died, Vivian wasn't at her apartment like she told police. She was following him. Eleanor's voice hardened. I have traffic camera footage of her car on the same route, 15 minutes behind his Tesla. You've had this for 3 weeks and didn't go to police? With what? Circumstantial evidence against one of the most powerful families in the state? Eleanor shook her head. But tomorrow, in front of witnesses, with Marcus's own game as the stage, that's when we can make sure the truth comes out. My phone buzzed with another message. Asterisk game starts in 13 hours. Final contestant briefing at 10 a.m. Bring everything you've learned. It's time to play for keeps. M asterisk. Whoever was sending these messages knew exactly what we discovered. And they were counting on us to finish what Marcus had started. Eleanor and I spent the next hour planning what felt like either a brilliant trap or elaborate suicide mission. She had resources I didn't, private investigators, political connections, and most importantly, a mother's rage that had been simmering for 3 weeks. The game will be broadcast, she explained, showing me documents from her envelope. Vivian insisted on it, said Marcus would have wanted the spectacle documented. She thinks it makes her look innocent, the grieving fiancé honoring his final wishes. But it also means everything will be on record. Exactly. Whatever happens tomorrow, there will be witnesses. Eleanor's smile was sharp as broken glass. My son learned his strategic thinking from me, Sarah. He might have been planning this confrontation for months. We agreed to stay in contact overnight, sharing information as we discovered it. Eleanor left first, and I was gathering my things when my phone rang. James, and he sounded panicked. Sarah, you need to get out of there. Now. What's wrong? I've been going through the 3rd USB drive. Marcus didn't just record the Ashworths' conversations, he recorded everyone's. Including mine. James's voice cracked. Sarah, I think I know why he really broke up with you. James? The hack that came through your laptop? It wasn't random. Someone paid me to install malware when I fixed your computer last year. Before I knew what they were planning, before I understood what Marcus was building. He was talking fast, words tumbling over each other. I needed the money. My mom's medical bills, and Marcus was paying himself 10 times what I was making, and I thought it was just corporate espionage, not. You betrayed him. The words came out flat, emotionless. You betrayed both of us. I tried to tell him the truth after the breakup, but he said it was too late. That he'd rather have you hate him than know what I'd done. James was crying now. Sarah, everything that happened, Marcus pushing you away, Vivian getting close to him, the company falling apart, it all started because I was desperate and stupid and I sold out my best friend for $30,000. I hung up and sat there in the empty coffee shop, trying to process this final betrayal. Marcus hadn't just died thinking I was a gold digger, he'd died protecting me from the truth about someone I trusted. My phone immediately started ringing again. James, calling back, but I let it go to voicemail. Then Eleanor's number appeared. Sarah, we have a problem. I just received a call from Mr. Whitmore. The game has been moved up again, to 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. And James Morrison has withdrawn from the competition. What? Apparently he contacted Mrs. Ashworth an hour ago and declined to participate. Which leaves 4 contestants instead of 5. Eleanor paused. Whatever you said to him tonight, it spooked him badly. I closed my eyes, thinking about the USB drives, the evidence, the elaborate plan we'd been building. James had been our technical expert, the one person who understood Marcus's systems and security measures. There's more, Eleanor continued. The location has changed again. Not the Ashworth building, somewhere called the Pemberton Estate. Vivian says it was Marcus's specific request in a sealed letter that was only to be opened if circumstances changed. The Pemberton Estate. I'd never heard Marcus mention it, but something about the name felt familiar. Mrs. Blackwood, I think we're being herded. I think you're right. But tomorrow morning, we walk into whatever trap they've set anyway. Her voice was steel. Because it's the only chance we have to get justice for my son. After we hung up, I sat in my car outside the coffee shop and called the number I'd been avoiding. James answered on the first ring. Sarah, please let me explain. Where's the Pemberton Estate? Silence. Then, how do you know about Pemberton? The game's been moved there. James, what is that place? It's where Marcus's grandfather lived. The old family property up in the hills. Marcus inherited it but never went there, said it held too many bad memories. James's voice was hollow. Sarah, if they're taking you there, you need to understand something. That house is completely isolated. No cell service, no neighbors for miles. You're scaring me. Good. Be scared. Because I just realized something else, Vivian didn't choose that location randomly. The Pemberton Estate is where Marcus's grandfather died. Alone. In a locked room that the police said was suicide but the family always suspected was murder. The game was starting in 9 hours, and I was beginning to understand that some of us weren't meant to walk away. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to a 24-hour diner in Burbank and claimed a corner booth, spreading Marcus's letter and Eleanor's documents across the sticky Formica table like battle plans. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while I tried to piece together what felt like an elaborate death trap disguised as a game show. At 2 a.m., my phone lit up with another mysterious text. * Pemberton Estate has 3 entrances. Main gate will be locked. Service road behind the stables is your best option. Game room is in the east wing, 2nd floor. Whoever my anonymous helper was, they knew the property layout better than I did. I texted back, "Who are you?" The response came immediately. Someone who cared about Marcus more than he knew. Someone who's been planning this longer than Vivian has. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway, needing something to do with my hands while my mind raced. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't like. Marcus hadn't just designed this game as a final puzzle, he'd designed it as a trap. But for whom? At 3:30 a.m., Eleanor called. "I can't sleep either," she said without preamble. "I've been thinking about what Marcus really wanted from this game. Justice? Maybe. Or maybe he wanted to force a confession." Her voice was thoughtful. "Sarah, what if the Jeopardy format isn't random? What if he designed specific questions that would expose what each contestant was hiding?" The idea sent a chill down my spine. Marcus had always been calculating, but this would be manipulation on a level that felt almost cruel. "The hidden rules he mentioned in your letter," Eleanor continued. "What if they're not just about winning the money? What if they're about surviving whatever he set in motion?" At 4 a.m., James started calling repeatedly. I finally answered on the 6th try. "Sarah, please. I know I screwed up, but you can't go to that estate tomorrow." "Why?" "Because you're worried I'll expose your part in all this." "Because I've been doing research all night, and the Pemberton estate isn't just isolated, it's dangerous. The main house has a history of accidents. Marcus's grandfather, yes, but also a groundskeeper in 1987, a real estate agent in 2003. James's voice was urgent. "People who go there alone don't always come back. I won't be alone. There are 4 contestants. That's what worries me. Sarah, what if Marcus didn't design this game to choose an heir? What if he designed it to gather all his suspects in one place?" The possibility hung between us like a loaded gun. Marcus, even in death, orchestrating a final confrontation. "The questions," I said, suddenly understanding. "If he really recorded everyone's conversations, if he knew who betrayed him and how. Then tomorrow isn't a game show. It's a trial. And one of you is going to be found guilty." At 5 a.m., I *, one final text, * bring the USB drives. All of them. The truth comes out today, no matter what it costs. Trust the game. Marcus knew what he was doing. *. I stared at the message, then at the document spread across my table. In 2 hours, I'd be driving up into the hills toward a house where people died alone. I'd be facing off against a woman who'd probably murdered the man I'd loved, his parents who disowned him, and questions that might expose secrets worth killing for. But I'd also finally get the answers Marcus had died trying to give me. I gathered my papers, paid for my coffee, and headed toward what felt like either vindication or a very elaborate tomb. The game was about to begin, and I was done running from the truth. The Pemberton estate loomed against the dawn sky like something out of a Gothic nightmare. I found the service road behind the stables just as my mysterious helper had promised, parking between overgrown hedges that scraped against my car windows. The main house was a sprawling Victorian monstrosity, all dark wood and twisted spires, nothing like Marcus's usual sleek, modern aesthetic. My phone had lost signal the moment I turned onto the mountain road, cutting me off from Eleanor, from James's panicked warnings, from whoever had been feeding me information. I was completely alone now, clutching a backpack containing the USB drives and printed copies of everything we discovered. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house felt frozen in time, Persian rugs worn thin by decades of footsteps, oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and the musty smell of old money and older secrets. My footsteps echoed on hardwood floors as I followed signs pointing toward Game Room East Wing. I found Eleanor first, standing in what had once been a grand dining room, now converted into something that looked like a television studio. Professional cameras on tripods, bright lighting rigs, and in the center, 3 podiums arranged in a semicircle facing a large screen. It looked exactly like the Jeopardy set, down to the blue and silver color scheme. "Sarah." Eleanor turned as I entered, her face pale but determined. "I've been here for 20 minutes. No sign of Vivian or Richard yet. Where's the production crew?" "That's what I was wondering. All this equipment, but no one to run it." She gestured toward a control booth visible through glass windows. "Everything appears to be automated." I walked closer to the podiums, noticing that each had a nameplate. Sarah Chin. Eleanor Blackwood. Vivian Ashworth. But there was a 4th podium, and the nameplate made my blood run cold, Marcus Blackwood. "Eleanor," I said slowly, "why is there a podium for Marcus?" Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Vivian swept in wearing a perfectly tailored black dress and heels that clicked against the hardwood like gunshots. She looked around the room with the satisfaction of someone whose plan was proceeding exactly as intended. "Ladies," she said, her smile sharp as broken glass. "How deliciously Gothic. Marcus always did have a flair for the dramatic." "Where's Richard?" Eleanor asked. "Marcus's father won't be joining us. He received some rather disturbing information last night about his son's investigation into our family's business practices. He decided discretion was the better part of valor." Vivian's eyes glittered. "It's just us girls now." The screens around the room suddenly flickered to life, and Marcus's voice filled the space, a recording, clear as if he were standing right beside us. "Welcome to my final game. If you're hearing this, I'm dead, and at least one of you knows exactly how that happened." Eleanor gasped. Vivian's perfect composure cracked for just a moment. "The rules are simple," Marcus's voice continued. 3 rounds of questions about my life, my work, and my death. But unlike regular Jeopardy, wrong answers have consequences. And the final round, well, let's just say the truth has a way of coming to light. The main screen displayed a message. Round 1 begins in 60 seconds. Contestants, take your positions. As I walked toward my podium, I noticed something that made my hand shake. The fourth podium, Marcus's, had a red light that was slowly pulsing, like a heartbeat. Ladies, Vivian said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes deadly, may the best woman win. The game was about to begin, and I was starting to realize that only one of us was meant to walk out alive. The countdown hit 0, and the main screen exploded with the familiar Jeopardy board. But instead of normal categories like potpourri and world capitals, I was staring at Marcus's childhood, TC Nova secrets, private conversations, financial irregularities, and the night he died. My mouth went dry. Marcus hadn't just designed a game, he'd designed a public execution. Let's start with something easy, Marcus's recorded voice announced. Eleanor, you have first selection. Eleanor's voice shook slightly. Marcus's childhood for $200. The screen displayed, this was the age when Marcus first told his parents he wanted to build computers instead of practicing law. What is, 8 years old? Eleanor answered. Correct. Eleanor, select again. I watched the points rack up on her podium display, $200. But underneath the score, a new line of text appeared, truth level, 15%. My blood chilled. The game wasn't just tracking right answers, it was tracking something else entirely. Technova secrets for $400, Eleanor said, gaining confidence. This employee sold company information to competitors for exactly $30,000 in medical bill payments. Eleanor's eyes flicked to me, then to Vivian. The silence stretched for 30 seconds before the buzzer sounded. The correct answer is, who is James Morrison? Marcus's voice said. But since none of you answered, let's hear what James had to say about it. The speakers crackled, then James's voice filled the room, a recording I'd never heard before. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Marcus. Sarah had nothing to do with the breach. I installed the malware when I fixed her laptop because I was desperate, and when you blamed her instead of investigating further, I was too much of a coward to tell you the truth. I felt like I'd been punched. Eleanor looked at me with something like pity, while Vivian's smile grew wider. How fascinating, Vivian purred. Sarah, darling, it sounds like your boyfriend died thinking you betrayed him. How tragic. My turn, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The night he died for $600. The question appeared, this person was following Marcus's Tesla on Pacific Coast Highway, staying exactly 0.3 miles behind according to traffic camera analysis. I hit my buzzer immediately. Who is Vivian Ashworth? Correct, Marcus's voice said, and my truth meter jumped to 35%. But let's hear Vivian's explanation. Another recording played, Vivian's voice, crystal clear, Daddy, he won't sell. We've offered him everything, and he keeps refusing. Maybe it's time to consider the alternative we discussed. The color drained from Vivian's face. Those recordings are inadmissible. They were obtained illegally. This isn't a court of law, Eleanor said quietly. This is Marcus's house, and these are his rules. The game continued for another 20 minutes, each question more damning than the last. We learned that Richard Blackwood had been secretly negotiating to sell Marcus's research to pharmaceutical companies. That Eleanor had hired private investigators to dig up dirt on me during Marcus and my relationship. That the SEC investigation had been initiated by a complaint filed by Ashworth Industries. But it was Vivian's turn that made everything click into place. Private conversations for $1,000, she said, her composure finally cracking. This was Marcus's last text message, sent at 11:47 p.m. on the night he died. The screen displayed a message I'd never seen, *V, I know what you really want. Meet me at Pemberton in 20 minutes. Come alone, and I'll give you everything, the patents, the research, all of it. But this ends tonight. M***. Vivian's truth meter hit 85%, and suddenly the red light on Marcus's podium began pulsing faster. Round 1 complete, Marcus's voice announced. Vivian, you're in the lead for truth percentage. Sarah, you're in second. Eleanor, you're last, but don't worry, the final round is worth everything. A new message appeared on screen, round 2, the Cayman Islands account. Winner takes all. That's when I realized Marcus's real game had just begun. The screen flickered, and a new category appeared, Cayman Islands account winner takes all. But before any of us could select a question, the lights in the room dimmed, and Marcus's voice returned with a tone I'd never heard before, cold, calculated, almost mechanical. Ladies, we've reached the point where the game becomes interactive. Vivian, step away from your podium. I don't think so, Vivian snapped, but her voice wavered. Step away from your podium, or the recordings of you discussing my accident with your father get automatically uploaded to every major news outlet in the next 60 seconds. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Vivian's hands trembled as she moved away from her position, and I noticed something I'd missed before, small cameras mounted on each podium, all focused on our faces. Sarah, Marcus's voice continued, the USB drives in your backpack contain more than just evidence. They contain the access codes to $15 million currently sitting in Grand Cayman. Money that was never part of my official estate because certain people were planning to make sure I didn't live long enough to spend it. My heart hammered against my ribs. Marcus, if this is really you somehow. It's not me. I'm dead. But I programmed this system to activate if specific conditions were met. If the 3 women who destroyed my life all ended up in the same room, playing my game. The voice paused. Eleanor, you hired investigators to prove Sarah was a gold digger. Vivian, you murdered me for patents worth $40 million. Sarah, we'll get to that. Eleanor stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. That's enough, Marcus. Even in death, you're being a manipulative bastard. Mother, you mortgaged your house to pay private investigators $60,000 to dig up dirt on the woman I loved. When they couldn't find any real evidence of wrongdoing, you had them fabricate financial connections between Sarah and my business competitors. The accusation hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 60-plus years. I was protecting you, she whispered. That girl was going to take everything you'd worked for. No, Mother. You were protecting your own investment in my success. Marcus's voice was merciless now. You needed me to marry someone from an appropriate family, someone who would enhance the Blackwood reputation instead of reminding people that we weren't always rich. I stared at Eleanor, pieces clicking into place. You planted evidence. That's how Marcus found proof I was connected to corporate espionage. She did more than that, Marcus's voice confirmed. Eleanor, tell Sarah about the fabricated bank records showing payments from Ashworth Industries to her art gallery account. Eleanor's face crumbled. They were supposed to scare him away from you temporarily. I never meant for him to believe them permanently. But Vivian was backing toward the door, her designer heels clicking frantically against the hardwood. This is insane. I'm leaving. The doors locked automatically when round 2 began, Marcus informed her. Motion sensors, electronic deadbolts, the whole 9 yards. We're all staying until the game is finished. Vivian yanked on the door handle, then spun around with pure fury in her eyes. You want to play games with a dead man? Fine. Sarah, do you want to know what your precious Marcus was really like? He didn't just break up with you because of fake evidence. He broke up with you because James told him you were asking questions about his finances, about offshore accounts, about patent valuations. My stomach dropped. That's not true. James recorded the conversation where you asked about Marcus's real net worth and whether his patents were as valuable as tech blogs claimed. Vivian's smile was vicious. Marcus thought you were doing financial due diligence on your own boyfriend. The room spun around me. I had asked those questions, not because I wanted his money, but because I'd been worried about him. He'd been so stressed about the company, so paranoid about competitors, that I'd researched Technova's actual value to understand what kind of pressure he was under. Context matters, Marcus's voice said quietly, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he sounded like the man I'd fallen in love with. Sarah was trying to help me, but I was too paranoid and too influenced by manufactured evidence to see that. The main screen displayed a new message, Round 3, Final Jeopardy. Category, Redemption. One question, Marcus announced. Winner takes the Cayman account, the patents, and most importantly, the truth about what really happened the night I died. A 60-second countdown appeared on screen. The question is, who sent Marcus the anonymous tip that led him to discover Vivian's real plan? I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Someone had been helping Marcus, feeding him information, setting up this entire elaborate trap. Someone who knew about the murder plot, about the family betrayals, about everything. The countdown hit 30 seconds, and that's when I noticed the fourth podium, Marcus's podium, was no longer empty. Someone was standing behind it, someone who'd been in the room the entire time, hidden in the shadows. Someone who'd been playing a much longer game than any of us realized. The figure stepped into the light, and my world tilted completely off its axis. Hello, Sarah, James Morrison said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I'm sorry it had to be this way. James? I stared at him in disbelief. You said you weren't coming. You withdrew from the competition. I lied. He moved around Marcus's podium, and I noticed he was carrying a laptop bag and what looked like a remote control device. I've been here since 4 a.m., setting up the final stage of Marcus's plan. Vivian's face had gone chalk white. You're supposed to be the guilty one. You're the one who betrayed him first. I was the one who betrayed him first, James agreed, his voice hollow. But I was also the one who spent the last 6 months of his life trying to make it right. Sarah, that anonymous tip Marcus got about Vivian's real plan? That came from me. Eleanor stepped forward, her confusion evident. You've been working together this whole time? Even after he died? Not together. For him. James pulled out his laptop, connecting it to the room's main system. Marcus knew he was going to die 3 days before the accident. Not because he was suicidal, but because he'd figured out exactly when and how Vivian was planning to kill him. The room went dead silent except for the hum of electronic equipment. That's impossible, I whispered. If he knew, why didn't he go to the police? Because he needed proof. And because. James looked directly at me, his eyes filled with regret. Because he wanted to make sure you were protected. Sarah, the real reason Marcus designed this game wasn't to choose an heir. It was to create an unassailable public record of what the Ashworth family did to him. Vivian lunged for the door again, clawing at the electronic lock. This is kidnapping. This is imprisonment. You can't. Actually, we can, James interrupted, pulling up security footage on the main screen. Because 20 minutes ago, I transmitted copies of everything, the USB drives, the recordings, the financial evidence, to the FBI, the SEC, and investigative reporters at 4 major newspapers. The story breaks in 90 minutes whether this game finishes or not. My hands were shaking as the implications hit me. James, what exactly did you and Marcus plan? Justice. Finally. He pulled up a new screen showing bank account information. The Cayman Islands money isn't Marcus's inheritance, Sarah. It's restitution. $15 million that the Ashworth family paid to various parties over the past 2 years, bribes, hush money, payments to hackers and corporate spies. Vivian had stopped clawing at the door and was now staring at James with pure hatred. You have no idea what you're messing with. My family has connections you can't imagine. Had connections, James corrected. Past tense. Because in about an hour, when the FBI raids your father's offices with warrants based on Marcus's evidence, those connections are going to disappear very quickly. Eleanor sank back into her chair, looking stunned. My son orchestrated all of this from beyond the grave? Your son was brilliant, vindictive, and absolutely ruthless when someone he loved was threatened, James said simply. He spent his last 3 months building an elaborate trap, and Vivian walked right into it. The main screen displayed a new message, final question reveals all. Press any buzzer to continue. But before any of us could move, the room speakers crackled with a sound that made my blood freeze, Marcus's voice, but not a recording this time. This was a live video call, and Marcus Blackwood was staring at us from the screen, very much alive. Hello, ladies, he said with a smile I'd never seen before. Did you miss me? The silence in the room was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Marcus stared at us from the screen, older somehow, thinner, with a scar running along his left temple that definitely hadn't been there 6 months ago. Surprised? His smile was cold, calculating, the expression of a man who'd spent months planning this exact moment. James, excellent work on the dramatic timing. though I think Vivian looks like she's about to faint. Vivian's face had gone from chalk white to a sickly green. This is impossible. You're dead. I saw the crash site, the burned car, the body that was burned beyond recognition. Marcus leaned back in what looked like a leather chair, somewhere with expensive-looking bookshelves in the background. Amazing what $15 million can buy on the black market. New identity, staged accident, even a corpse from a morgue in Tijuana who happened to match my height and weight. Eleanor found her voice first. Marcus? My God, what have you done? What I had to do, Mother. When I realized that everyone I trusted, literally everyone, had betrayed me in some way, I decided it was time to find out who my real enemies were. His eyes moved to the camera, and for a moment he looked directly at me. Sarah, you were the only one I wasn't sure about. The only variable I couldn't predict. My throat felt like sandpaper. The breakup. The cruel things she said about me being too poor. Were necessary to protect you. If you'd stayed with me, Vivian's family would have eventually targeted you too. The fake financial evidence Eleanor provided just gave me a convenient excuse to push you away before things got dangerous. James was typing rapidly on his laptop, pulling up new screens. The FBI raids start in 47 minutes, he reported. Ashworth Industries, their private investigators, the SEC contacts they bribed, everyone goes down simultaneously. But there's still one problem, Marcus continued, his voice taking on that familiar edge I remembered from business calls. Vivian, you attempted to murder someone. Even if that someone faked his own death, attempted murder is still a serious crime. Vivian's laugh was high and hysterical. Attempted murder? I never tried to kill anyone. The car accident was real, it just wasn't you in the car. No, but you sabotaged my Tesla's braking system on March 15th. You hired a mechanic named Roberto Sanchez to install faulty brake lines during routine maintenance. Marcus pulled out a tablet, reading from it. Roberto was very chatty once the FBI offered him immunity in exchange for testimony. The color drained from Vivian's face completely. I never. You also researched my driving patterns for 3 weeks, documented my late-night trips to the Malibu house, and calculated the optimal location for an accident on a dangerous curve with no witnesses. Marcus's voice was merciless now. The only thing you didn't account for was me figuring out your plan and deciding to let you think it worked. Eleanor stood up suddenly, pacing toward the screen. Marcus, this is insane. You let your own family mourn you. You put us through hell. You put Sarah through hell first, he shot back. You hired investigators to destroy an innocent woman's reputation because you couldn't accept that I might love someone who didn't come from the right social class. I finally found my voice. Marcus, the past 6 months. I thought you were dead. I grieved for you. How could you let me believe? Because I needed you safe while I gathered evidence. And because. His composure cracked slightly. Because I needed to know if you'd fight for my memory even after the cruel way I treated you. Sarah, you could have walked away from this game. You could have let Vivian inherit everything and moved on with your life. But I didn't. No. You didn't. You fought for the truth even when it hurt. Marcus looked directly into the camera. The Cayman Islands account is yours, Sarah. All 15 million. Not because you were my girlfriend, but because you were the only person in this room who loved me enough to seek justice without expecting anything in return. Vivian made a desperate lunge for James's laptop, but he was ready for her, pulling it out of reach. The transfers are already processing, he told her calmly. And the FBI will be here in approximately 30 minutes to place you under arrest. This whole thing is a setup. Vivian screamed. Illegal surveillance, entrapment, fraud. Actually, Marcus said pleasantly, everything we've done is completely legal. The recordings were made in my own home with my own equipment. The financial evidence was gathered through legitimate channels. And faking your own death isn't illegal in California as long as you don't commit fraud in the process. The screen flickered, and a new message appeared, game complete. Truth level, 100%. Winner, Sarah Chen. But as I stared at Marcus's face on the screen, all I felt was exhausted. The money would change my life, the truth would clear my reputation, and Vivian would face justice for her crimes. So why did victory feel so much like another kind of loss? Marcus, I said, staring at his face on the screen, I need you to answer one question, and I need you to be completely honest. His expression softened slightly. What is it? Did you ever actually love me, or was I just a useful pawn in your elaborate revenge plot? The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Eleanor had stopped pacing, James had paused his typing, and even Vivian's frantic struggling had ceased. Everyone was waiting for his answer. Sarah, Marcus said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, staging my death was the hardest thing I've ever done, but letting you mourn me was the cruelest. I've watched you from a distance for 6 months. I saw you painting again, really painting, not just the commercial work you did to pay rent. I saw you helping James through his guilt even after you learned what he'd done. I saw you refuse 3 different job offers because you said you needed to see this through first. He leaned closer to the camera. I fell in love with you because you saw through all my walls and loved the person underneath anyway. I staged this entire game because I realized that person was worth protecting, even if it meant losing you forever. The sound of sirens began echoing from outside, distant but growing closer. The FBI's early, James noted, glancing at his laptop. Vivian, you might want to cooperate. Make this easier on everyone. But Vivian had collapsed into a chair, her perfect composure finally shattered completely. Daddy's going to disown me, she whispered. The family name, the foundation, everything we built. Everything you built on lies and murder, Eleanor said sharply. Marcus, I need to know, can you forgive a mother who nearly destroyed the best thing in your life because she was too proud to admit she might be wrong? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Mom, the private investigators, the fake evidence, that hurt worse than Vivian's murder attempt because it came from someone I trusted completely. But. He looked directly at me through the screen. Sarah forgave James for betraying our relationship. Maybe forgiveness is something I need to learn too. The sirens were getting louder now, and I could hear vehicles pulling up the gravel driveway. Heavy footsteps on the front porch, authoritative voices calling out federal warrants. Sarah, Marcus said urgently, there's something else. The neural interface patents, they're not part of the estate or the game. I signed them over to a medical research foundation yesterday. Free and open source, just like I always planned. Despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the 6 months of grief, I felt myself smiling for the first time in hours. You're going to save people's lives. We're going to save people's lives. The foundation wants you on the board of directors. Turns out they need someone who understands both the technical applications and what it means to fight through darkness. The game room doors burst open, and federal agents in bulletproof vests flooded in, weapons drawn but lowered when they saw we were just talking. A woman with graying hair and a no-nonsense expression stepped forward. Vivian Ashworth, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and corporate fraud. You have the right to remain silent. As they cuffed Vivian and read her rights, Marcus's voice came through the speakers one last time. Sarah, I'll be back in Los Angeles tomorrow. I know I don't deserve it, but would you maybe want to get coffee? Somewhere public, neutral territory. No games, no tricks. Just us, figuring out if there's an us worth fighting for. I looked around the room, at Eleanor wiping away tears, at James closing his laptop with relief, at Vivian being escorted away by federal agents, at the elaborate game show set that had exposed 6 months of lies in a single morning. Yes, I said to the screen, to Marcus, to the possibility that sometimes love survives even the most elaborate betrayals. But I'm buying. I can afford it now. His laughter, real, unguarded, the sound I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago, filled the room as the FBI finished their arrests and the morning sun finally broke through the estate's dark windows. The game was over. The truth had won. And for the first time in 6 months, the future felt like something worth fighting for.